Good morning, everyone. I don't know if any of you know who AirDNA is, so I'll give a quick background as to why Status kindly invited me to come here today. Me and my co-founder started our company in 2015. What we realized was there was a gold rush going on that was going to really change real estate and tourism. And I think most of you who are here today have also realized this opportunity that's here. That when we first started listing our places on Airbnb, we could not believe the amount of money we could make versus the long-term rental industry. So collectively, we thought we should start building data for this, as there was no data out there. 3 years on, we like to think we're the leading data provider for short-term rentals. How do I move my slides along, Status? Brilliant. Okay. No problem. I'll carry on talking. You have a look. So really what I want to say is that opportunity was so huge in 2015, and that opportunity remains today. And the theme of my presentation will be to talk about that continued growth globally and in Greece, and particularly how the opportunity today is not so much as it was then, put any old property up on Airbnb or HomeAway, and you could make some money. Now you have to have a little bit more finesse, you have to work a little bit harder and see who your competition is, but there are still enormous returns to be had on Airbnb. So if we talk about what is required for success on these listing sites, before we get into the data, you have to make sure you have your table stakes there. What is really going to allow success? And that is really thinking through why someone will pick your property. The first thing people look at is your photos. So before you even mess around with data or investments or cleaning strategies, you really need to make sure your photos are excellent. Secondly, your description. Is it welcoming? Is it warm? You don't want to read these descriptions that say no parties, no cooking of fish, no coming in late, no coming in early. Greeks are famous for their hospitality, and make sure that comes through in your listing. What does your profile look like? Do you look like a murderer in your profile photo? Try not to. Have yourself looking warm and inviting. If you do, unfortunately, look like a murderer, find someone who doesn't, so the guest feels that they're going to be safe in your house. And then, finally, your reviews are very important. This is the other main reason people pick their listing. So when you think about particularly when you're starting, how do you get good reviews? You hear often that people set up a listing and they work really hard, they make really nice furnishings, but no visitors. So I have a trick for getting that off the ground, and that is maybe getting your friend to quickly book a listing. So once you've got 2 or 3 listings that are warm or off the ground, you can't, oh, fantastic, you can't fail. So, and the final element of that successful listing is to deliver to your guests, particularly when you're early. Make sure that they really are getting an exceptional experience. And combined with that, you need to make sure for your first guests that the pricing is very good. So you can think about maximizing your profits later, but that first month, you want to overwhelm people with the quality and value of your listing, and then away you can go. So let's talk a little bit more about AirDNA. So we started in 2015 picking up data on Airbnb, and now we have HomeAway in our portfolio of data we collect. We did this to help hosts like us because there was no data at all out there. Our methodology for collecting this data is every day we scrape all 5 million Airbnb listings and all HomeAway listings and analyze each calendar. So what that means is when you go on to Airbnb, you see the property and you see the calendar, the dates that are available and unavailable. We look at that calendar every day, look for changes, look at the behaviour of those changes to analyse whether those are reservations or block days. So out of that, we try and continue to get ever better at demonstrating exactly what each property that's a short-term rental earned in the previous year, and how it's booked going forward. So this is how we've aspired to help people along, just like us were originally, that you go from being curious because someone told you there are returns to be made in short-term rentals. We help you pick the property, which, whether it's local in Greece or internationally or just local to Athens, which is the neighbourhood where you can get the best returns. And then once you have the return, what are you doing with your listing? What's your cleaning fee? Is that in line with the market? How many photos do you have? Is that in line with the market? We have a tool that breaks down all the norms of the area. What is going on in Athens in general? And you don't want to be too far outside of that norm. And then once you're getting more professional with your listing, the most important thing is pricing. This is what is going to make you get the bookings or not get the bookings. Once you've organised your listing, everything looks fine, there's no murderers anywhere on your listing, no hint of something that might go wrong. Now it's pricing people are picky on. And if you're not seeing how your pricing is compared to the rest of the market, then you will never make as much money as you could. We still see over 60% of listings on Airbnb have flat pricing. It's including maybe a nuance for weekends and weekday, but the whole year round, they're 80 euros for weeknights, 100 euros for weekends. But Athens is so seasonal here that you can get so much more in the summer than you can in the winter. And all hoteliers will know this in Athens, but so many people in this industry are very amateur. So that's why there still remains such a big opportunity that if you can be better than average, then you can make so much more than someone who's not as attentive to those details. So what's going on in short-term rentals since we started? What is the latest trends? So we really see this professionalisation becoming more and more important. Getting your house in order, knowing how to price your property, having the guests' expectations get ever higher. When Airbnb first came out, there was very much a feeling that you're staying in someone else's house, so okay, there's only one towel, oh, I'm not sure how clean these sheets are. Expectations are rising now. It's becoming a more professional industry. So when it comes to not only the pricing of your property, but you also have to consider the concierge services that I know people are talking about later today at this meeting. So the expectations of the consumer are much higher than they were 3 years ago. And then the increased competition is out there. We're going to talk about this a bit more, about how many more listings are coming online in Greece. And so the competition is a lot more rigorous. So you cannot do what you did last year and expect to get the same results. You need to try harder to be more successful, to be able to make your place be more appealing. So this is the overall rise of short-term rentals that we've picked up in the last 2 years. So actually, there's a typo here. This is 140%. The analysts got a bit carried away. But what we've done as a company is fuse together listings that are on Airbnb and HomeAway and match them in together. So this is not duplicate. If they're on Airbnb and HomeAway, it's just marked as Airbnb there. So this is the total supply around the world. And it continues to rise, considering I'm sure many of you had heard of short-term rentals some years ago and thought maybe the opportunity was missed. But it continues to rise, and demand continues to rise as well. So what's been going on with hotels? A few years ago, hotels were very, very anti-Airbnb. But the world is changing because, as I've just described, this was a completely amateur industry 4 or 5 years ago, and professionalisation is coming. So there's two kinds of people professionalising. There are the people who came from the short-term rental industry who are learning fast. They're learning how to do their pricing. They're learning the importance of photos. They're beginning to learn that just the rent you receive is not the limit of the revenue you can have. There's lots of other things you can throw in. But there are the other people who know this industry so well and are beginning to realise that they can transfer their expertise to vacation rentals, and that's the hotels. So I don't know how many hoteliers we have here today. I certainly know there's a few of you who run hotels and vacation rentals, and I think hotels are really understanding this is a big opportunity for them too. The growth in hotels, they've had a long growth cycle. It's never going to be growing at 10, 15, 20% a year. Whereas vacation rentals, it's the Wild West. So we're seeing a lot more, not only the big hotel groups, but the smaller hoteliers getting into vacation rentals, using their expertise in operations, in revenue enhancements, in F&B, the other services they can provide, and transferring that to vacation rentals. So not only are vacation rentalers becoming more professional, but the hotels are looking into it and bringing that professionalism in as well. So once again, if you started off as an amateur listing, had some quirky features, in a few years you're going to struggle to compete with the maturing of the vacation rental industry and the inserting of hotels. So here's some data on what's happened in Greece in the last year. So this is December just gone. I know it's off-season, but it's the short-term rental industry moves so fast that comparing months and months is often more valuable than years on years. So this is the off-season, and we can see what's happened, and maybe some of you are feeling this. Word has got out amongst the Greek people that there is money to be made in short-term rentals, and they have flocked to providing listings across Greece. And you can see the growth rate in listings. So we've got available entire place listings, listings that had a booking over December. So many places had no bookings over December as they were either taken down or their pricing wasn't right and demand is low. But you can see, most crucially, the average daily rates and the revenue per available rental, RevPAR, are both down a lot in last year. This is competition coming. So this is not universal, but people are making much less in general in Greece in December in 2018 than there were in December 2017. Do not worry, because this is overall. Remember all those amateurs. The amateurs aren't here today. The amateurs aren't thinking seriously about how they're pricing, how they're cleaning, how they're presenting their properties. It's not universal at all. And also, as we go through the data, we see it's very different in different parts of Greece. So these are the top 5 markets for RevPAR growth in Greece in 2018. So these are huge numbers. We saw a 20% fall in Greece overall, but these markets are growing fast. So if you're thinking about expanding your portfolio, changing your portfolio, understanding the markets that are on the march and on the rise is very important, because what is happening in these markets is demand has risen far more than supply. Whereas when we look at Greece overall, supply has risen more than demand for Greece in December. So it's very important to consider, as you look at your portfolio of vacation rentals, where should you be expanding to? And you need to make sure it's in the markets that are growing, not that are shrinking. Don't just get distracted by how much they earn today. Think about the trajectory of where that market is going. So in terms of overall listing numbers, these are the top cities in Greece. Well, top cities, top regions. So Crete is the #1 destination for both Airbnb and HomeAway, and Athens coming second. So, and you can see that Airbnb remains dominant in Greece compared to HomeAway. HomeAway, I'm sure many of you know, is much more of a traditional vacation rental company. So historically, they were not heavily involved in urban markets. There were very few HomeAway properties in places like Athens and Thessaloniki. And for Airbnb, when they came up, their concentration was places like Athens and Thessaloniki. And as the companies have matured, they've gone into each other's markets. But still, Airbnb is historically strong in urban markets, and HomeAway is historically strong in vacation rental markets. It's an important feature that if you are listing on as a short-term rental, you need to be on multiple platforms because similarly, people look in different ways. And it's very much in the arc of maturity of getting into vacation rentals that you start with just Airbnb and just one platform, and you realize you need to be on Airbnb, you need to be on HomeAway, you need to be on Booking, you need to be on TripAdvisor to make sure you're maximizing your guests coming in. So this is, as I was speaking about at the beginning, you can see that demand, people are staying more and more in vacation rentals. It's becoming broader and broader. It used to be something that maybe people in their 20s would do because it was a cheap way of visiting. It used to be something maybe young families would do because of the convenience of having multiple bedrooms. But more and more people are experiencing what it's like to stay in a short-term rental. People who always would have stayed in hotels now think, maybe a short-term rental will suit better for us. Maybe it would be nice to have a kitchen. Maybe it would be nice to have a couch to relax in. So the dynamics of who's changing, who's staying in these markets and staying in these short-term rentals is changing. But the most important thing that came out of this research from Skift is how satisfaction is tumbling. 60 to 47% in 1 year is a lot. So that is, as I mentioned before, people's expectations are really rising as to why they should stay in a short-term rental. It's not just someone else's house. They don't forgive the bins not being empty, it not being perfectly clean. And because more and more people come onto the market, there's maybe more and more people more casual about hospitality. So the real key to success is to continue yourself professionalizing and making a hotel-esque experience, even though it's just a short-term rental. So, what's going on in Athens? So professionalization, you really need localized short-term rental data. So what does Athens look like these days? There are 5,000 active hosts in Athens, which I think half of them must be here, maybe. So it's a big number, but there's a huge number of people here. And then 54% of properties are managed by multi-listing hosts. What that means is one host has at least two properties assigned to their host ID. So this, by the reverse, means 45% of people have just one property. So they are the amateur hosts, and 54% of properties are managed by the people maybe a little bit more than amateur, heading towards professional. So remember how remarkable this is. There are no amateur hoteliers in the same way. So in this market, when we look at these numbers, if you're taking a professional approach, you should be doing better than these numbers. You should have the thought to think, Easter weekend, I should raise my rates. That's a busy weekend in Athens. And think through the dynamics of being a professional business owner. You can see this, the list of markets that when they were booked. So this is interesting to also look at the professionalization. So what this means is booked 1 to 3 months in the last 12 months. So that 84% means 84% of the properties were booked for 90 or fewer days of the year. And 17% were booked for 180 days or more through the year. So it's just showing how much part-time supply there is, whether that's seasonality and people give up in the quiet months, or whether it's they actually live in the properties and they are truly swapping out and having people come in when they're there. But it remains an enormously amateur industry. If you were to look at hotel rooms, you would rarely see many hotel rooms that are only booked for 90 days a year. So just thought I'd bring that out to show the dynamics of the area. So this is Athens overall. AirDNA tries to rate markets around the world on a curve. It can be anywhere from A to E as a good place to set up an Airbnb. We do a mixture of the returns you can make there. We do a mixture of the trajectory of earnings in that region. We try and back into the regulations that are available, how friendly they are, and we come up with Athens as an A. And you can see, though, the seasonality that's involved in Athens. So that purple line is total revenue in Athens by month over time. So you can see that the summer months roar ahead and the winter months are low. So in August of this year, roughly $10 million of revenue, unfortunately it's in dollars, came into the city in that single month through Airbnbs. Whereas we look in the off-season, that is around 3 million. So I'm sure you all know this is a seasonal market. Booking lead times are something you really start to consider when you get into the professional side of Airbnb. So what this chart is showing, that through the different months, these are the average days Airbnbs are booked in advance. So you can see in the summer season, in June it's highlighted, the average property is booked 60 days in advance, whereas in January, that's 25 days in advance. So people are booking much further in advance. So when you're considering your pricing and what you're offering, if your property hasn't been booked within that window, you're starting to feel the pressure of when will it be booked. So having knowledge of when, on average, people are booking these properties, make sure that your pricing reflects those dynamics in the market. One of the data points we provide a lot in AirDNA is what's happening in the future. I mentioned we look at every listing every day and see the availability going forward. So this is a random example of Athens at the moment for larger properties. And you can see just here, Easter. So you can see that the number of properties available, the purple line, has fallen heavily in that time. It's because they've been booked up. So, but when we look at the pricing line here, the pricing is not reflecting that. So there's a real opportunity at Easter that if you have your property and it's still not booked for Easter, you should raise your rates because supply is short. And having that knowledge about different events, not just thinking summer, winter, weekend, weekday, you really think into what are the events that empower you to have your pricing at the optimal level. And very often, events can be very local. There can be a neighborhood that has a small festival, and lots of people want to stay there. But the other side of Athens, there's nothing, everything's the same as ever. So having that localized data looking into the future is how you can make those great pricing decisions where you can make 30, 40% more over the year by knowing your local supply and demand. So these are the top 10 neighborhoods by RevPAR in Athens. I regret I'm not as familiar with Athens neighborhoods as I could be, and I won't humiliate myself by trying to pronounce most of them. But hopefully these make sense. Acropolis, I know. But the other ones are more mysterious to me. But you can see the range, of course, in Athens over the different neighborhoods. But where's it up and coming? So I mentioned before that the important thing is what's coming up, as well as what the existence is today, and what basis that is. So you can see the neighborhoods by listing growth coming up. Doesn't necessarily mean there's good money to be made there, but it can often be an indication of oversupply. So the real metric to look at is RevPAR, revenue per available rental, and see where that is rising up. And we can see some of the smaller neighborhoods are doing particularly well. So this is when you think about your portfolio. Do you want to add some? Maybe you want to lose some. What's the trajectory of these different neighborhoods? Okay, I'm coming to the end here. So if you can what can you take away from this short speech? You can think that the market, what you did last year, will not be good enough for next year. This professionalization trend is something you have to listen to very carefully. That if you don't improve your performance, improve the quality of your properties, the quality of your listings, the quality of your pricing, someone else will move and improve ahead of you. So you can't rest on your laurels, even if you had a great year last year. You also need to really start thinking about that RevPAR is down in Greece. But it's not down for everyone, because if you're competitive with your pricing, if you understand exactly who your competitive set are in your neighborhood and how you can price better than them, understand what available supply is, understand the booking lead times, then you can outperform your competition and outperform the market. So I hope that's been helpful. I'm on a panel shortly if there's any other questions we want to go through, but thanks very much for your time.